The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the Palazzo Vecchio as Lorenzo de' Medici prepared for what would become one of the most crucial negotiations of his political career. Across from him sat representatives of three rival city-states, each believing they held the upper hand. What they didn't realize was that Lorenzo had spent months studying the teachings of a brilliant political theorist whose insights would forever change how power, influence, and attraction operated in human relationships. That theorist was Niccolò Machiavelli, and the lesson Lorenzo was about to demonstrate would echo through centuries. Those who value themselves appropriately become magnets for respect, opportunity, and the finest people life has to offer. The principle seems counterintuitive at first glance. How can valuing oneself more highly attract others? Wouldn't this appear arrogant or off-putting? Yet Machiavelli understood something profound about human nature that modern psychology has only recently begun to validate. People are naturally drawn to those who demonstrate genuine self-worth through their standards, behaviors, and expectations. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed yet commanding. When the first representative began with what was clearly a lowball offer, Lorenzo didn't react with anger or desperation. Instead, he smiled slightly and said, "Gentlemen, I believe there's been a misunderstanding about the value we bring to this arrangement." His tone was neither defensive nor aggressive, it was the voice of someone who knew exactly what he was worth. This moment illustrates the first fundamental principle of magnetic self-value. It's not about proclaiming your worth through words, but demonstrating it through your standards and responses to how others treat you. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the importance of reputation and how others' perceptions of your value directly impact your ability to achieve your goals. But he also understood that this perception must be rooted in genuine self-knowledge and consistent behavior. The representatives exchanged glances. They had come prepared for negotiation, compromise, even conflict. They hadn't expected to encounter someone who seemed genuinely unbothered by their initial position. This calm confidence immediately shifted the dynamic in the room. Suddenly, they found themselves wondering what they might be missing about Lorenzo's position. This reaction reveals a crucial aspect of human psychology that Machiavelli observed centuries before it was formally studied. When someone demonstrates genuine self-value through their behavior rather than their words, others instinctively begin to question their own assumptions. The person who knows their worth and acts accordingly becomes intriguing, even magnetic, because they represent something rare in a world full of people seeking external validation. But Lorenzo's approach wasn't born from arrogance or manipulation. Earlier that morning, he had spent time in reflection, considering not just his negotiating position but his deeper understanding of what he brought to any relationship or arrangement. This internal work, this honest assessment of one's genuine value, forms the foundation of magnetic self-worth. Machiavelli emphasized that true power comes not from what others think of you, but from understanding your own capabilities, resources, and character. However, he also recognized that this self-knowledge must be accurately calibrated. Overestimate your value, and you become delusional; underestimate it, and you invite others to do the same. The second representative, sensing the shift in energy, adjusted his approach. "Perhaps we should discuss the broader benefits of this alliance," he suggested, his tone notably more respectful than moments before. Lorenzo nodded approvingly, recognizing that his demonstration of self-value had already begun to elevate the entire conversation. This transformation illustrates another key insight from Machiavellian thinking: when you raise your own standards, you automatically raise the standards of every interaction you enter. People naturally rise to meet the level of respect and quality they perceive you expect. Conversely, when you accept treatment below your worth, you signal to others that such treatment is appropriate. As the morning progressed, Lorenzo demonstrated various aspects of magnetic self-value. When presented with terms that were favorable but not exceptional, he didn't immediately accept or reject them. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions that revealed he was considering multiple options. This wasn't bluffing or game-playing, he genuinely had cultivated alternatives, understanding that having choices is fundamental to maintaining self-value. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of never appearing desperate or overly eager, not because deception is virtuous, but because desperation often leads to poor decisions and invites others to take advantage. The person who maintains their standards even under pressure demonstrates a strength that others find both attractive and trustworthy. During a break in negotiations, Lorenzo walked to the window overlooking the bustling streets of Florence. He reflected on how his journey to understand self-value had begun years earlier, not with political theory but with a personal crisis that had forced him to examine what he truly brought to his relationships and endeavors. That crisis had come when several allies had abandoned him during a difficult period, leaving him to question whether he had been too accommodating, too eager to please, too willing to accept less than he deserved. The pain of that abandonment had driven him to study not just political strategy but the deeper principles of human attraction and respect. What he discovered was that people often treat others exactly as those others demonstrate they should be treated. If someone consistently accepts disrespect, others learn that disrespecting them carries no consequences. If someone regularly compromises their standards for the sake of maintaining relationships, others learn that their standards aren't really standards at all. But the opposite is equally true. When someone consistently demonstrates self-respect through their choices, boundaries, and expectations, others learn to respect those boundaries as well. More importantly, this consistency attracts people who naturally operate at higher standards themselves. When negotiations resumed, the third representative made an offer that was significantly better than the morning's opening positions. Lorenzo listened carefully, asked clarifying questions, and then said something that surprised everyone in the room: "This is closer to what would work for us. Let me take some time to consider it properly." The representatives were taken aback. In their experience, negotiations were about pushing for immediate decisions, creating pressure, forcing quick agreements. Lorenzo's response demonstrated something they rarely encountered: someone who valued the decision-making process itself enough to give it the time and consideration it deserved. This approach reveals another crucial aspect of magnetic self-value. It extends to how you treat yourself in decision-making processes. People who rush into agreements, who make important decisions under pressure, or who fail to give themselves adequate time for consideration are unconsciously signaling that they don't value their own judgment or well-being. Machiavelli understood that the quality of your decisions directly impacts others' perception of your capabilities. Someone who consistently makes thoughtful, well-considered choices earns a reputation for wisdom and reliability. This reputation becomes part of their magnetic appeal. As Lorenzo deliberated, he wasn't just considering the terms of the agreement. He was examining whether this arrangement aligned with his broader goals and values. This internal alignment is crucial to genuine self-value. When your actions consistently reflect your deeper principles and long-term interests, you develop an inner coherence that others find compelling. That evening, Lorenzo hosted a dinner for Florence's cultural and intellectual elite. Watching him interact with his guests, an observer would notice several subtle but powerful demonstrations of magnetic self-value in social settings. When someone made a comment that was clearly intended to impress him, Lorenzo responded with genuine interest but didn't offer excessive praise or validation. He treated the comment as worthy of consideration rather than something requiring his approval. This balanced response illustrates an important social principle: people are most attracted to those who are genuinely interested in others without being easily impressed. The person who maintains their own center while engaging authentically with others creates a sense of earned appreciation that feels more valuable than casual praise. During the dinner conversation, a young artist presented Lorenzo with a painting, clearly hoping for patronage. Instead of immediately accepting or rejecting the offer, Lorenzo examined the work carefully, asked about the artist's technique and inspiration, and then said, "I'm impressed by your dedication to your craft. Let me think about how I might support your work in a way that serves both of us well." This response demonstrated several aspects of magnetic self-value simultaneously. First, Lorenzo didn't make hasty decisions even about relatively small matters, showing that he valued his own judgment process. Second, he acknowledged the artist's skill without overpraising it, maintaining calibrated appreciation. Third, he framed potential support as a mutual benefit rather than charity, preserving the artist's dignity while maintaining his own standards for how he engaged in patronage. The artist left the dinner more excited about the possibility of Lorenzo's support than if he had received immediate acceptance. The uncertainty, combined with the respect shown for both the work and the decision-making process, made the potential relationship feel more valuable. This interaction reveals a paradox that Machiavelli understood well: when you don't immediately give people what they want, but you treat their requests with genuine consideration, they often value your eventual response more highly. This isn't about manipulation or playing hard to get, it's about demonstrating that your decisions carry weight because you take them seriously. The following week brought news that would test everything Lorenzo had learned about magnetic self-value. A powerful neighboring state, one that had initially been excluded from the negotiations, sent an emissary with an offer that was substantially better than anything he had previously received. The emissary made it clear that they expected a quick decision and hinted that delays might lead to the offer being withdrawn. In his younger years, Lorenzo might have jumped at such an opportunity, fearful that hesitation would cost him a valuable alliance. But his study of Machiavellian principles had taught him that desperation is the enemy of good judgment, and that truly valuable opportunities don't require you to abandon your decision-making process. Instead of showing excitement or concern about the timeline, Lorenzo responded calmly, "Your offer deserves serious consideration. I appreciate your position regarding timing, and I'll give you my decision within the timeframe that allows me to evaluate this properly." The emissary, who had expected either immediate acceptance or negotiation about the timeline, found himself in unfamiliar territory. Lorenzo's response demonstrated that he valued his own judgment process more than he feared missing an opportunity. This stance immediately communicated several things: that he had other options, that his decisions were based on careful consideration rather than impulse, and that he wouldn't be pressured into agreements that hadn't been properly evaluated. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the importance of never appearing desperate, but his deeper insight was about the relationship between desperation and poor decision-making. When you make decisions from a place of fear or scarcity, you often accept terms that don't serve your long-term interests. When you make decisions from a place of centered evaluation, you consistently create better outcomes. Over the following days, Lorenzo used his established decision-making process to evaluate this new opportunity. He considered not just the immediate benefits, but how this alliance would impact his existing relationships, his long-term goals, and his reputation. This thorough evaluation wasn't just about making a good decision, it was about maintaining the internal standards that had made him magnetic to valuable opportunities in the first place. During this period, something interesting happened. The original 3 representatives returned with a revised offer that was significantly better than their previous proposal. They had spent the week discussing Lorenzo's response to their negotiations and had concluded that someone who took decision-making so seriously was likely someone worth working with more closely. This development illustrates a crucial principle: when you consistently demonstrate self-value through your standards and processes, you don't just attract better individual opportunities, you raise the overall quality of opportunities that come your way. People begin to compete to meet your standards rather than expecting you to lower them. The new emissary also returned, not to pressure for a quick decision but to provide additional information that might assist Lorenzo's evaluation process. He had realized that someone who couldn't be rushed was likely someone who made better decisions, and therefore someone whose partnership would be more valuable. This shift in others' behavior demonstrates the magnetic effect of consistent self-value. When you refuse to compromise your standards under pressure, people don't typically walk away, they adjust their approach to meet your standards. This happens because they recognize that your standards exist for good reasons and that working with someone who maintains high standards typically produces better results. As Lorenzo prepared to make his final decision, he reflected on how his approach to this situation differed from his past patterns. Previously, he might have focused primarily on which option offered the most immediate benefits or the least risk. Now, he was considering which choice aligned best with his values, supported his long-term goals, and reflected the kind of leader he wanted to be. This shift in decision-making criteria reflects the deeper transformation that occurs when someone truly develops magnetic self-value. Instead of making choices based primarily on external pressures or immediate gratification, they begin to use their own principles and long-term vision as the primary guide for their decisions. The decision Lorenzo ultimately made surprised everyone, including himself. Rather than choosing the most lucrative offer, he selected an arrangement that offered moderate immediate benefits but exceptional long-term potential and perfect alignment with his values. More importantly, he structured the agreement in a way that maintained his autonomy while creating genuine mutual benefit. This choice demonstrated the ultimate expression of magnetic self-value, making decisions based on your own evaluation of what serves your genuine interests, regardless of external pressures or expectations. When someone consistently makes choices from this centered place, they develop a reputation for wisdom and integrity that makes them even more attractive to future opportunities. The months following Lorenzo's decision validated his approach in ways he hadn't anticipated. The alliance he chose led not only to the expected benefits but to introductions to other high-quality partners who shared similar values and standards. His reputation for thoughtful decision-making attracted approaches from people and organizations that were themselves operating at higher levels. This multiplication effect is one of the most powerful aspects of magnetic self-value. When you consistently demonstrate that you value quality over quantity, thoughtful evaluation over quick decisions, and long-term alignment over short-term gains, you attract others who share these same values. This creates an upward spiral where each good decision leads to access to even better opportunities. But, perhaps more importantly, Lorenzo discovered that his enhanced self-value had transformed his internal experience. He no longer felt anxious about whether others would approve of his choices or stressed about missing out on opportunities. His decisions were made from a place of confidence and clarity rather than fear and scarcity. This internal transformation is often overlooked when people think about developing self-value, but it's actually the foundation of the magnetic effect. When you genuinely know your worth and make decisions from that knowledge, you emanate a kind of centered confidence that others find compelling. This isn't about projecting an image or trying to appear confident, it's about the natural magnetism that comes from inner alignment. During a gathering several months later, a young merchant approached Lorenzo for advice about a business decision he was facing. Lorenzo listened to the situation and, then, asked a question that revealed the deeper principle behind his approach. What would someone who truly valued their judgment and their future do in this situation? This question encapsulates the practical application of magnetic self-value. Instead of asking what others expect, what would be easiest, or what carries the least risk, the question focuses on what choice would reflect genuine self-respect and long-term thinking. The merchant considered the question seriously and realized that his initial inclination to accept the first reasonable offer he received was based more on anxiety about missing out than on careful evaluation of his options. Lorenzo's question helped him recognize that he had been operating from a scarcity mindset rather than from genuine self-value. Over the following hour, Lorenzo shared the principles that had transformed his own approach to decisions and relationships. He explained how Machiavelli's insights about power and influence applied not just to politics but to every aspect of human interaction. Most importantly, he emphasized that magnetic self-value isn't about thinking you're better than others, it's about treating yourself with the same respect and careful consideration that you would give to someone you truly valued. This distinction is crucial because many people either undervalue themselves or swing to the opposite extreme of overestimating their importance. True self-value is based on honest self-assessment combined with the recognition that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, including yourself. As their conversation continued, Lorenzo described how developing genuine self-value had changed not just his professional life but his personal relationships as well. Friends who had previously taken advantage of his accommodating nature either adjusted their behavior or naturally drifted away, replaced by people who appreciated and reciprocated his higher standards. This shift in relationships is often one of the most noticeable effects of developing magnetic self-value. As you raise your standards for how you treat yourself, you automatically raise the standards for how others must treat you to maintain access to your time and energy. Some people will rise to meet these standards, while others will reveal that they were only interested in what they could take rather than what they could contribute to a genuine relationship. The young merchant asked how to distinguish between having appropriate standards and being unreasonably demanding. Lorenzo's response revealed another key insight from his study of Machiavellian principles: the difference is whether your standards serve everyone involved or just yourself. When I expect to be treated with respect, I also treat others with respect. When I take time to make good decisions, I also give others the time they need for their decisions. True standards elevate everyone. This reciprocal aspect of magnetic self-value is often misunderstood. It's not about demanding special treatment while giving nothing in return. It's about creating a standard of interaction that benefits everyone involved. When you model respect, thoughtfulness, and integrity, you make it easier for others to do the same. The merchant left their conversation with a new framework for approaching his business decision and, more importantly, a new understanding of how self-value operates in all aspects of life. Several weeks later, he returned to thank Lorenzo, explaining that applying these principles had led not only to a better business arrangement but to a noticeable improvement in how others treated him in both professional and personal contexts. This transformation illustrates the universality of these principles. Whether applied to business negotiations, romantic relationships, friendships, or family dynamics, the same fundamental truth holds: how you demonstrate that you value yourself teaches others how to value you. As Lorenzo's reputation for principled decision-making and personal integrity spread, he began receiving opportunities that he never could have anticipated. Leaders from distant regions sought his counsel, artists competed for his patronage, and scholars traveled from across Europe to engage with his ideas. But, perhaps most significantly, he attracted into his circle people who shared his commitment to excellence and mutual respect. This attraction of like-minded individuals represents one of the most rewarding aspects of magnetic self-value. When you consistently operate from principles rather than convenience, you naturally connect with others who share similar values. These relationships tend to be more satisfying, more productive, and more enduring than those based on mutual accommodation or shared convenience. The principles Lorenzo had learned and applied weren't complex or mysterious. They centered on treating himself with the same consideration he would give to someone he genuinely respected, making decisions based on his values rather than his fears, and maintaining his standards even when doing so required short-term sacrifice. But the simplicity of these principles shouldn't obscure their power. In a world where many people operate from scarcity thinking, desperation, or the desire to please everyone, someone who consistently demonstrates genuine self-value becomes remarkably magnetic. They offer something rare: the stability and integrity that comes from knowing one's worth. Years later, when historians studied Lorenzo's influence during this period of Florentine history, they often focused on his political strategies or economic policies. Few understood that his most significant tool was his embodiment of the principle that self-value is magnetic. By raising his own standards and consistently demonstrating his worth through his choices and behavior, he had attracted the alliances, opportunities, and relationships that made his other achievements possible. This historical perspective reveals something important about how magnetic self-value operates over time. Its effects compound. Each decision made from genuine self-value enhances your reputation, which attracts better opportunities, which enable you to make even better choices. This creates an upward trajectory that can transform not just individual lives but entire spheres of influence. The young merchant who had sought Lorenzo's advice became successful enough in his own right to eventually offer guidance to others facing similar challenges. When asked about the most important lesson he had learned, he would tell the story of Lorenzo's question: what would someone who truly valued their judgment and their future do in this situation? This question had become more than a decision-making tool for him, it had become a way of life. By consistently asking himself what self-respect would look like in each situation, he had developed the kind of magnetic presence that attracted good people and good opportunities while naturally repelling those who didn't share his values. The ripple effects of Lorenzo's approach continued to spread as others observed and adopted similar principles. Florence during this period became known not just for its wealth or military strength, but for the quality of its leadership and the integrity of its institutions. This reputation attracted the best artists, scholars, merchants, and diplomats from across Europe, creating a concentration of talent and excellence that benefited everyone. This larger impact demonstrates how individual self-value contributes to collective elevation. When enough people in any community, organization, or society operate from genuine self-worth rather than desperation or opportunism, the entire culture shifts toward higher standards and better outcomes. But Lorenzo's story also reveals the challenges inherent in developing and maintaining magnetic self-value. There were times when his principled approach cost him immediate opportunities or created temporary difficulties. Maintaining standards sometimes meant accepting short-term losses for long-term gains. The path of genuine self-value isn't always the easiest path. However, these challenges ultimately strengthened rather than weakened his position. Each time he chose his principles over convenience, each time he maintained his standards despite pressure to compromise, he reinforced both his internal sense of worth and others' perception of his integrity. These moments of testing became the foundation of his magnetic reputation. The key insight from Lorenzo's experience is that magnetic self-value isn't a destination but a practice. It requires constant attention to your own standards, regular evaluation of whether your choices reflect your values, and the courage to maintain your principles even when doing so is difficult. This ongoing nature of the practice is actually part of what makes it magnetic. People are drawn to those who are clearly committed to their own growth and development, who take their decisions seriously, and who demonstrate through their actions that they value quality over convenience. As Lorenzo entered the later years of his life, he reflected on how dramatically his world had changed since he first began applying these principles. The relationships in his life were deeper and more meaningful. The opportunities that came his way were more aligned with his values and interests. His influence had grown not through manipulation or political maneuvering, but through the natural magnetism that comes from genuine self-worth. Most importantly, he had achieved something that eluded many powerful people: peace of mind. Because his decisions were based on his own principles rather than others' expectations, because his relationships were founded on mutual respect rather than mutual convenience, because his standards were maintained through consistent choice rather than external enforcement, he lived without the anxiety that comes from constantly trying to manage others' perceptions or control outcomes beyond his influence. This inner peace, combined with outward effectiveness, represents the ultimate fruit of magnetic self-value. When you know your worth and demonstrate it consistently through your choices, you create both personal satisfaction and external success. You become someone that others naturally want to work with, learn from, and be around. The story of Lorenzo's transformation offers a roadmap for anyone seeking to develop their own magnetic self-value. It begins with honest self-assessment, understanding your genuine strengths, contributions, and worth without either false modesty or inflated ego. It continues with the establishment of standards that reflect this worth: how you expect to be treated, what kinds of opportunities you'll accept, and what principles will guide your decisions. Most importantly, it requires the consistent demonstration of these standards through your choices and behavior. This means making decisions based on your values rather than your fears, maintaining your principles even under pressure, and treating yourself with the same respect you would show someone you genuinely valued. The magnetic effect doesn't come from proclaiming your worth or demanding recognition. It comes from the quiet confidence that emanates from someone who knows their value and acts accordingly. This confidence is compelling because it's grounded in reality rather than insecurity, in principles rather than ego, in long-term thinking rather than immediate gratification. Lorenzo's application of Machiavellian principles reveals that true power comes not from dominating others but from the natural influence that flows to those who demonstrate genuine self-worth. When you value yourself appropriately, others naturally begin to value you as well. When you maintain high standards, others rise to meet them. When you make decisions from principle rather than pressure, others trust your judgment. This transformation isn't just about personal success, it's about creating the kind of relationships and opportunities that make life meaningful. When you operate from genuine self-value, you attract people and situations that align with your highest potential. You become a magnet not for whatever is available, but for the best that life has to offer. The principles Lorenzo discovered and applied remain as relevant today as they were in Renaissance Florence. In a world that often encourages people to settle for less than they deserve, to make decisions from fear rather than wisdom, and to seek external validation rather than internal confidence, the person who demonstrates genuine self-value stands out like a beacon. This beacon quality isn't about being better than others, it's about being true to your own potential and inviting others to do the same. When you raise your standards, you give everyone around you permission to raise theirs as well. When you demonstrate what it looks like to value yourself appropriately, you model a way of being that others can adopt in their own lives. The magnetic nature of self-value isn't mysterious or manipulative, it's the natural human response to encountering someone who has achieved the integration of inner worth and outer behavior. Such people offer something rare in any era: the stability that comes from self-knowledge, the integrity that flows from principled action, and the confidence that emerges from consistent self-respect. Lorenzo's story demonstrates that this magnetic quality isn't reserved for the naturally charismatic or those born to privilege. It's available to anyone willing to do the internal work of understanding their genuine worth and the external work of demonstrating that worth through their choices and standards. The transformation he experienced, from someone who accommodated others at his own expense to someone who naturally attracted respect and excellent opportunities, illustrates the power of aligning your internal sense of worth with your external behavior. This alignment creates a magnetic field that draws in people and situations that match your elevated standards while naturally repelling those that don't. The practical application of these insights begins with a simple but profound shift in how you approach decisions. Instead of asking what others expect or what would be easiest, begin asking what someone who truly valued themselves would do. This question, applied consistently across all areas of life, can initiate the same kind of transformation that Lorenzo experienced. The journey toward magnetic self-value isn't always comfortable. It often requires saying no to opportunities that don't meet your standards, setting boundaries that others might initially resist, and maintaining principles even when doing so creates short-term challenges. But the long-term results justify the temporary discomfort: better relationships, superior opportunities, and the inner satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with your genuine worth. Lorenzo's legacy extends beyond his political achievements to encompass the example he set of what becomes possible when someone consistently demonstrates appropriate self-value. His life illustrates that the magnetic attraction of such demonstration isn't just about personal benefit, it's about contributing to the elevation of everyone around you by modeling what integrity, principle, and self-respect look like in practice. The principles he discovered and applied offer a timeless guide for anyone seeking to develop their own magnetic presence. By understanding your genuine worth, establishing standards that reflect that worth, and consistently demonstrating those standards through your choices and behavior, you too can experience the transformation that comes when self-value becomes truly magnetic. This magnetism isn't about attracting attention or admiration, it's about naturally drawing into your life the people, opportunities, and experiences that align with your highest potential. When you value yourself appropriately, the world responds by offering you its best. When you raise your standards, others rise to meet them. When you demonstrate genuine self-worth, you become a magnet for everything that makes life meaningful and successful. The story of Lorenzo's transformation serves as both inspiration and instruction. It reveals that magnetic self-value isn't a mysterious quality possessed by a fortunate few, but a learnable skill available to anyone willing to undertake the journey of genuine self-development. Through his example, we see that the path to becoming truly magnetic begins with the simple but revolutionary act of treating yourself with the respect and consideration you deserve. In our modern world, where external validation often takes precedence over internal worth, where quick decisions are valued over thoughtful ones, and where accommodation is often mistaken for kindness, the person who demonstrates genuine self-value stands out as someone rare and attractive. They offer the stability of principled action, the reliability of consistent standards, and the inspiration of someone living in alignment with their true worth. The magnetic quality of such individuals isn't about perfection or superiority, it's about the compelling nature of authenticity and integrity. When you encounter someone who truly knows their value and demonstrates it through their choices, you're witnessing something that the human spirit naturally recognizes and respects: a person who has achieved the integration of inner worth and outer behavior. This integration is what creates true magnetism. It's what draws people toward those who have learned to value themselves appropriately. And it's what transforms individuals from those who accept whatever is offered to those who naturally attract the best that life has to give. Lorenzo's journey from accommodation to magnetic self-value offers hope and direction for anyone ready to undertake similar transformation. His story proves that it's never too late to begin treating yourself with the respect you deserve, establishing standards that reflect your true worth, and consistently demonstrating these standards through your choices and behavior. The magnetic effect of such transformation extends far beyond personal benefit. When you model genuine self-value, you give others permission to discover and demonstrate their own worth. When you raise your standards, you contribute to the elevation of every environment you enter. When you choose principle over convenience, you strengthen the fabric of integrity that makes meaningful relationships and successful endeavors possible. The principles revealed through Lorenzo's experience aren't just historical curiosities, they're practical tools for modern transformation. In a world that desperately needs examples of integrity, self-respect, and principled action, the person who develops genuine self-value becomes a beacon of what's possible when inner worth and outer behavior achieve perfect alignment. This alignment creates the magnetic field that draws in everything that makes life meaningful: relationships based on mutual respect rather than mutual neediness, opportunities that align with your values rather than just your immediate desires, and experiences that contribute to your growth rather than just your comfort. The transformation Lorenzo experienced is available to anyone willing to embark on the journey of genuine self-development. It begins with the recognition that you possess inherent worth that deserves to be honored through your choices and behavior. It continues with the establishment of standards that reflect this worth. And it culminates in the consistent demonstration of these standards, regardless of external pressures or temporary inconveniences. Through this process, you too can discover what Lorenzo learned: that self-value is indeed magnetic, that raising your standards attracts the best, and that the principles of integrity and self-respect, properly applied, create a life of meaning, influence, and deep satisfaction. The lessons of Machiavelli, as interpreted and applied by Lorenzo, offer timeless wisdom for anyone seeking to develop their own magnetic presence. They reveal that true power comes not from dominating others but from the natural influence that flows to those who demonstrate genuine self-worth. They show that the best opportunities and relationships aren't captured through manipulation or desperation but are naturally attracted by the magnetic field of authentic self-value. Most importantly, they prove that the journey toward magnetic self-value, while challenging, is ultimately rewarding beyond measure. For in learning to value yourself appropriately, you not only transform your own life but contribute to the elevation of everyone around you, creating ripple effects of integrity and excellence that extend far beyond your immediate sphere of influence. The story of Lorenzo's transformation stands as testament to the power of these principles and invitation to all who would follow a similar path. In a world hungry for examples of genuine integrity and self-respect, the person who develops magnetic self-value becomes a gift not just to themselves but to everyone whose life they touch.